Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. I'm very happy to have with me today Dr. Hani Khoury, who's a professor of mathematics at Mercer University, College of Professional Advancement in Georgia, the United States. He was born in Nablus, Palestine, with a rare and progressive physical disorder known as spinal muscular atrophy, a neuromuscular disease that sentenced him to an electric wheelchair at the age of 18. Dr. Hani Khoury is the author of the book Giving Up Is Not an Option, Memoirs of a Palestinian American. Dr. Hani Khoury, so happy to have you here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course, my pleasure. So, Dr. Hani, first, I'd like us to get started by telling us a bit about your book, about your what's your book about, so that the readers can get to know more about this book.
Well, I've met so many people throughout my life, and many of them have asked me to write a book, write about your journey, about my journey in life. I tell them about where I grew up, where I was born and grew up, and the experiences I've been through, and the challenges that I have met, and the perseverance that I have chose to follow throughout my life. And many of them have really encouraged me to write a book, and I took them seriously. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I chose to take a sabbatical from my work and began this project. And this project basically tells the story of a Palestinian who grew up, who was born in Nablus in Palestine and grew up under the Israeli occupation. And obviously, for the first 18 years of his life, he has encountered so many challenges in Palestine, given the facts that I was born with a rare disease disorder, spinal muscular atrophy, and as I was growing up, I realized that I was not. I will be probably facing a lot of challenges in life, given that especially if I had chosen to stay probably in Nablus, given that it's under occupation. There were not, the universities were not wheelchair accessible. Even schools that I attended were not wheelchair accessible. So I really had to find hope and possibility elsewhere. And I think that the United States was the choice, simply because I had relatives living in the States and in Canada. And every time they visited back home, they would say, I think, encourage my parents to send me to the States or to Canada. These are countries that have laws that relate to the lives of the disabled people, and the disabled people have rights, and the laws protect them. And I think that my parents really encouraged me to do so. So basically, the book is about my story and the challenges and the choices I have made throughout my life to be where I am today. I attended after I finished my high school, I came to Syracuse, New York, and my brother was living there, and I stayed with him for about a year and a half. And during that time, I was getting accustomed to living in the United States. Then he moved to Washington, D.C. He got a job there, and I stayed by myself in Syracuse. And I had to really find my own path. I mean, I had to really struggle and experience my own independence alone, living alone, or living with roommates. But I persevered. I was determined to go to college and do the best that I could, simply because I wanted a good, positive future. I met my wife Diane in Syracuse, and we got married. And then we moved, obviously, to the South after I finished all my degrees, undergraduate and graduate degrees. And then I was able to get a job at Mercer University in 1994. And I've been here at Mercer University since then. So it's really, I wanted to share my story with as many people as I could, those who have disabilities, or, people who do not have disabilities, just to tell them that, when there is a will, really there is a way.
Great. So I wanted to ask you about the process of writing a book. I was reading in the introduction, and you said that you used like a voice-enabled dictation tool.
Right.
And can you please tell us a bit about how long that it took? Just that you overcame like all the physical disabilities and you managed to do it. So your story is very inspiring. So I wanted to hear about the process of actually writing the book.
Right. It's definitely, my disability is progressive. So I knew ahead of time, a long time ago, that it's going to get worse. And
Okay.
at some point, I would not be able to use my arms, but I can still use my fingers. So I can still use a mouse. And actually, I teach just basically using a mouse. And I do very well with that because I like technology. My master's was in computer science. So I really appreciate what science and technology can do for us. And basically, being able to write a book requires you to either use a pen or, tell the story to the machine, or tell your thoughts, speak them loud to the computer, and then the computer will record. Now, obviously, all of us know that accuracy is an issue. So after dictating to the computer, I will have to go over what I dictated and make any corrections. But luckily, I was growing up and working in an age where technological edges really helped a lot. So I use Dragon as the software, and Dragon is an exceptionally good software. Can be easily trained. It can recognize your voice well and your accent very well. So I dictated them. Every time I had thoughts on my mind, I would just dictate them, and then obviously that's the idea is to put your thoughts on paper first, and then sequencing was an issue. So I wanted to make sure that the chapters in the book had a nice sequencing to them. The story as a whole kind of unraveled. It kind of moved smoothly from one chapter to the next. So writing was really a joy for me, but it was not the traditional way of writing a book, using a pen or a pencil and jotting down your thoughts or ideas or writing the paragraphs. But instead, it was dictating to a machine.
So just curious, why haven't you considered like hiring a ghostwriter or someone who can help you write the story?
I could have done that, but I'm very independent. I like to do things, by myself. I'm very, I like the challenges always. I meet them with an open heart, an open mind, and I think that by doing so, it makes me more determined to find solutions to everyday problems. I think this is just a challenge among many other challenges that I had to face, and I did not really, I didn't feel the need to hire someone or to do the work. I was able to do it, and it worked. I mean, just why not? So I just did it, and I was happy to follow that way.
Yeah, and it's a very good book. So I'm curious, did you hire an editor, or how was the publishing process? I'm assuming, like, because I looked at it, it's self-published.
Yes.
And so how did this process go through? Did you go through Amazon? The reason I'm asking is part of this podcast is we like to inspire aspiring authors. So we'd like to hear about your publishing process.
I used Amazon's KDP, which is a software that one can use to publish. Now, there is a formatting. There are formatting issues that you have to take into consideration. I also used Ingram Spark. So this book can be found on Amazon, or it can be found through the distributors that Ingram Spark uses. And each, both, they use their own formatting requirements. So basically, you basically go through the process by entering data that the software is asking you to enter, but it has to be done in the right format.
Mm.
The file types have to be the right types. The design of the cover, the measurements have to really be done very effectively. I used a free software called GIMP, GIMP, to format the cover, and it worked very well. And I have a friend of mine who's also a computer scientist. And if I had any problems, I would go to Patrick. I would say, Patrick, here's a challenge I have. And me and him will work together on it. And it really worked well because, as they say, the first time is always the hardest time.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one will be a lot easier, a lot easier. You can always make changes to the book. I mean, there's the nice thing about self-publishing is that if you discover an error somewhere, here or there, a minor error, you can always go back and change and update the book. So I really found it to be very useful, very helpful. It is not really an academic, purely academic book. I felt that self-publishing here would be appropriate because I'm telling my own story. And I was able to reach many people around the globe. So that was a good approach, I thought. Instead of relying on a traditional publisher and being under the mercy of their requirements, I just decided to do the work again on my own. I just like to do things and experience on my own.
Did you hire an editor or just one?
My colleague Dwayne Davis, who is one of my greatest mentors since 1994. I met Dwayne during my interview at Mercer University. He was the chair of the search committee that was looking for a candidate, and I applied for that position. And and the committee interviewed me on April 15th, 1994, in Forsyth, Georgia. And since then, we have been very, very close friends. And Dwayne volunteered to edit the book, and we met several times, 3 times, me and Dwayne, to go over the book, to make sure that everything is right and smooth. And he was really the editor of the book. He was the one who gave me suggestions about the different aspects of the book. And I'm very, very thankful to Dwayne. He is a great guy. I'm very proud of him as a colleague and as a mentor and as a friend. And so both Dwayne and Patrick were the backbones of my project.
Yeah, great. I read about how you met Dwayne in your book, and he also wrote the intro to the book. So it was nice to hear that he was also involved in editing the book. So what was the feedback among students or your friends who actually read the book, especially students, especially when it comes to the political issues? You live in the South, and there are different views when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, but traditionally more conservative societies tend to be more pro-Israeli. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to assume, but that's kind of the traditional, narrative. So what was the reaction to your book, especially because you talked about your suffering under the Israeli occupation, and how when you were in school, especially that story that really resonated with me, and when the Israeli soldier came to your class and asked you to stand up, and he cussed you in Arabic. He used the cuss word, and then the teacher had to intervene and say that you cannot stand up because of your condition, and that the soldier never apologized. And so all of these stories that show the human side of the Palestinian suffering. So I'm curious about the feedback, especially among students or communities that tend to be more leaning towards the Israeli side.
I have been teaching here at Mercer for nearly 30 years, and Mercer is a very, very has a very pure academic nature. It respects academic freedom, and I never felt that at the university that I was under any kind of pressure because of my political views. I have invited so many speakers to come to Mercer, and the university was very supportive. Now, in the community, I'm sure there are people who did not like that or did not welcome that. But I agree with you. The South, in particular, is geared more to be pro-Israel, simply because we have the Southern Baptists and the religious affiliation between Southern Baptists and pro-Israel and the Israeli lobby in the United States, and religious, Zionist Christians, I would say. They would, agree on many aspects of the conflict or the issue of Israel and the state of Israel. So I did not really feel any kind of pressures at the university. In the community, I used to write articles in the newspaper, and people would respond. But that's normal. That's welcomed. That's acceptable. It's a very civil way of exchanging ideas and expressing views. So I felt that I was able to enlighten the community around me, and the university in particular. There are many faculty members on campus who are pro-Palestinian, and they know the history very well. So they're not, they don't fall easily to the propaganda or to misconceptions or misrepresentations of the conflict. They know exactly the history of the conflict. I lived in an environment and a climate where I felt, that my views are welcomed. Now, obviously, my own stories back in Nablus, when the story that we referred to, when the soldiers invaded the school and one of them asked me to stand up and I could not stand up. I think for me that was the beginning of Israeli apartheid at the personal level, because I knew then and the fact that the soldier, when he asked me to stand up and he referred to me as an animal, stand up, you animal, and I could not stand up, and then my teacher had to interfere. I kind of, at that point, at that moment, I felt that my humanity was in danger. As a matter of fact, all of our humanity, not only mine, but also the soldiers' humanity was also in danger. That's the true victim, I think, in all of conflicts throughout the world. That the true victim in wars and conflicts is our common humanity, because we don't look at it as the priority. We don't prioritize humanity. We look at other aspects. We look at other interests on our lives. But overall, I live in a very welcoming community. I feel like I'm a citizen in this community. I can speak up in this community. We can have an exchange of ideas in a very civil way. And again, Mercer is a well-known university in the South, and it prides itself on academic freedom.
Did you get any reviews or feedback, like on Amazon or other places? And if you got any, how did any negative feedback? How did you deal with them?
Not so far. Not so
Okay.
far. Yeah,
Okay.
they were all positive reviews, positive ratings. The book is rated pretty good on Amazon so far, and nothing negative. Again, my own story is not very different from the traditional Palestinian story. I think that my own way of suffering is just it relates to my own story, my own condition, my own circumstances. But the Palestinian people as a whole, they have suffered in many other ways and many more tragic ways. So again, it's not that the world is not being able to witness what the Palestinians are going through, the suffering that they're going through on a daily basis. Mine was just a bit more unique in the sense that, I was born with a disability, and the incidents that I referred to in the book, this is one of them, when the soldiers decided to invade the school and look for rock throwers. And then the other story that I also shared was when I turned to be 16 years old, the Israeli government had a program for families of children who have disabilities, and they could the family can import a vehicle, a car, without paying import taxes. And import taxes are very high. And my dad's application was denied simply because we were not Israeli. We're not Israeli citizens.
Yeah, and I'm just curious about I'm just gonna switch gears here and talk about one sentence. You talked about your experience in the US, and you refer to the US as the greatest country on earth, and this some people might take an issue with that sentence. And I was wondering if you still feel this way and why.
I do. I think that the United States, and I'm not talking about the foreign policy of the United States. For me, the foreign policy of the United States is really, I have negative views about that aspect. But as a country, as a country that abides by the rule of law, there are laws in this country that protect the rights of its own citizens, and it guarantees them a path toward the future. And I am a testimony to that. I mean, when I became a U.S. citizen, I was able to fully participate in this society in the United States as a citizen of this country. So my views are, yes, I mean, I feel strongly about America being a great country. But again, I'm not talking about U.S. foreign policy. And in the book, obviously, any reader can tell that I'm a critic of U.S. foreign policy because it does not treat different aspects of different conflicts in the same way. That each conflict has in a way to deal with it. The United States is not has different standards, I would say, in dealing with different conflicts in the world, and that troubles me, I think, and it troubles me in the sense that I begin to question, why does the United States, for example, supports the rights of the Ukrainian to resist the Russian occupation, while the Palestinians are criticized when they resist the Israeli occupation. So again, but as a citizen, as a person who was able to obtain my higher education, as a person who was provided with the technology I needed to be independent. For example, my first wheelchair that I was able to use, I used it in the United States. My first vehicle that I was able to drive, I was able to drive it in the United States. So there are many aspects in this country that I feel proud of, many aspects. The intellectual freedom that I experienced in the United States, I don't think, it's valuable to me. It means a lot to me. So there are many aspects about living in the United States that make me proud to be a U.S. citizen. But again, there are other aspects, especially related to foreign policy, that makes me question and doubt.
Okay. And I'm gonna switch gears again, and I want to talk about the status of math and math education in this country. So I have 3 kids, and I look at their math homework, and honestly, I grew up in Jordan. I learned math in Arabic at Jordanian high schools, and I thought I was pretty good at math. I always got A's, and I liked math, but I have no idea what they're being taught, and the whole process is very new to me because they look at math in terms of strategy. So the math is like, what is your strategy when you do this? And I think they have an aim for that kind of thinking with math. And I find myself not being able to help them with their homework because I have no idea what to say, what to do. Like I was never taught the strategy of math. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that kind of new renaissance of math education in the US, and what are your views?
Well, I think that problem solving remains to be at the core of mathematics. And again, depending on the curriculum, and I think that I am, and you are familiar with the curriculum in Jordan and in Palestine, we know very well that it's algebra based, it's procedure based. So we follow procedures to solve problems, and there we are. But when I began to investigate more about the nature of mathematics and the meaning of mathematics, I began to see that problem solving remains to be at the core of it. So the question is, what is problem solving? And as a person with a disability, I really took advantage of my insight on problem solving to solve, basically to deal with my own personal challenges. But in the end, I think mathematics is the path toward questioning, toward pondering, toward possibility, toward investigation. I mean, there are lots of ingredients to mathematical thinking that go into defining its meaning. And in a way, mathematics is said to be the queen of all sciences because it has the upper hand in determining what reasoning is all about. So the idea, for us to reason and reason well and be critical in our thinking, I don't think we can be that way without having kind of roots in mathematical literacy. So it is, to me, a way of freeing the mind as well as freeing the soul. Because when I do mathematics, when I engage in doing mathematics, I feel very happy. I feel very excited. But that happiness and excitement come out of the fact that, things work or do not work for a reason. And you get to know that reason very well. And that's why I think that mathematics is essential. In the United States, the curriculum as a whole focuses on developing problem-solving skills. So there's a lot of emphasis on quantitative reasoning, and quantitative reasoning is essential in this world that we live in, because we are living in a world that is saturated with data, and we need ways to be able to explain the data around us in a meaningful way, and I think mathematics does provide for that.
So you mentioned something, you wrote a paper about the relationship between math and democratic and critical thinking, and the relationship between math and democracy. And that was a very brand new idea for me. I've never heard the relationship between math and democracy. So I'm really intrigued to hear a bit from you about, just explain in layman or laywoman terms, what are the relationship between math and democratic thinking for our listeners and viewers.
Well, if you want to look at the foundation of democracy, it is being able to carry out debates in a meaningful, civil ways. And so to be able to debate, you need to be able to have the tools to do so and do it well. Society, in order for it to move forward, society needs to be able to debate its own challenges in meaningful ways. And if it's not able to do so, it will slow down. The process of moving forward will slow down. And I think that mathematics, as it was historically introduced within the Greek society, was introduced as a way to move society forward. People were educated in order mathematically, in order to create arguments to establish meaningful ways. For example, they were able to achieve a more free society, open society. The ability to question was there. The ability to provide possible solutions was there. All of that is part of what I call a society that is honest with itself. An honest society has to be able to question, has to be able to propose solutions, examine ideas. And I think that along with my colleague, John Hannaford in England, we both believed along the way, all the way, that we need to be able to make that connection between mathematics and democracy clear. Democracy requires debates and honest debates, not just the idea of exchanging ideas without being meaningful. You know, we can discuss the Middle East conflict in ways that are not meaningful, or we can discuss the Middle East conflict in ways that are very meaningful. We can discuss American domestic policy in a meaningful way, and we can discuss it just so we can say we've discussed it.
So do you think countries that focuses on math are more democratic based on that theory?
I think they have more potential of being democratic, yes.
So a segue to this, I'm not sure if you agree with this, but I heard a lot of criticism when it comes to math education in the US. To say other nations like China and India are way ahead in math education when it comes to the US. Do you believe in this, or do you think it's exaggerated, and if that's the case, how do we rectify this?
It is actually the United States. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm in the southern region of the United States, and math is a big issue. Math achievement is a big issue in general, especially among the young elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Many students struggle with mathematics, but there are reasons for that. I think that why is we need probably more than few meanings to answer that question. But yes, mathematics literacy in the United States is not at the highest level. There are many other countries that have higher achievement. But you have to understand that you have other elements. There's a synergy between mathematical achievement or learning mathematics and what society offers in other domains. In other words, it's just not mathematics alone, but you need to look at the system as a whole. In other words, how does society view failure? As an example, does society punish you for failure, or does society try to find ways to overcome that failure? Does society look at you in a negative way if you fail, or does society allow for ways to improve and succeed? So failure, again, how is it seen, and how is it understood? There are many other elements that define the future of a society, and even as we talk about mathematics. So it's not just achievement in mathematics, but rather education as a whole. Its meaning, it's how it is designed, and for what purpose. Are we rewarding learning? Are we or not? Are we being very strict, or are we allowing for we all say we all make mistakes,
Yeah.
It's universal, but do we respond to that statement in the same way? And the answer is no. Some societies are harsh, some societies are not harsh. They allow you to make mistakes, and they don't sentence you to death. That's the difference. So there are elements. There are different elements.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. It's like you have one like school of thought is failure is not an option, and there's another school of thought is you have to fail to learn, and you cannot succeed without failing. So that's quite interesting. So lately, as the country is going through racial reckoning the past 2 years, they've been let's say a minority or a group of thought about relating math with race. And I'm just curious to see if you believe there's a relationship between like racial inequality and math and advanced programs. At least in our area, there's a lot of contentious debate about racial inequality and math and all of that. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
There is racial inequality. I mean, obviously, the United States struggles seriously with racism, and that racism creates inequality. It creates it inhibits access among certain groups in the United States. There's no question about that. So I would agree with that assessment, and I think that racial inequality is a barrier for many students across the country. Again, racial inequality it means that you're not seen as equal in terms of being a member of the society. You are viewed as being different, and just the fact that you're being viewed as different puts limitations on what one can do. So I would say, especially also in the area of math, where you need, when I look at myself, when I study and do mathematics, I need the right environment, the right, I need to be able to study with peace in mind, and if I don't have peace of mind, how can I function in a very thoughtful way? If I'm thinking about, where is my next meal going to come from, or if I'm going to think about why my mom is not able to get a better job, or a better profession because of her race, or there are lots of issues that, we are, as human beings, we have so much on our mind that can slow down the process of thinking comfortably, thinking at ease, because mathematics and science requires the mind to be able to be kind of healthy, not bombarded with other issues. So yes, there are lots of things that can stand in the way because of racial inequality.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about your trips to the Middle East and the Arab world. So it was, really like nice to hear about your trip back to Nablus 30 years after you left. And you
35.
also took 35, okay, 35. And you also took trips to Algeria and Doha and Jordan. So how do you assess the access to people with disabilities in the Arab world now, or at least in the countries that you visited? We don't want to look at the Arab world as monolithic or like they have the same issues, but at least in the countries you visited, how are these people with disabilities managing in these countries, and is there hope? Because I know your story when you grew up in Nablus, just the idea of your dad carrying you on his back, I was like, I cannot believe this was happening. But what other choice did he have if there were no wheelchairs? So are people still carrying their kids on their back? I mean, I cannot imagine this image of your dad and, like relatively old man carrying his son on his back to school. So,
Hope, there's always hope. There's no question. Otherwise, I would not be here. But there are differences between countries in the Middle East.
mhm.
The idea that my father carried me on his back is simply because being in a wheelchair was a stigma. I mean, if I wanted to use a manual chair, somebody had to push me. There had to be ramps, leading to the classroom. None of that was present. None of that. There has to be elevators. There were no elevators. There were no ramps. You can imagine living in a physical structure that does not allow you to manage a wheelchair. A wheelchair requires a certain environment, physical environment, in order to be able to use a wheelchair. So the physical environment itself was not welcoming the use of a wheelchair. Being in a wheelchair was also seen as a stigma. And I think that society itself did not look at people in wheelchairs in the same way. I think this is true everywhere, but to varying degrees, I think. So really, my dad had to, at some point, carry me from the car to the classroom and do it twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. Now, to speak about countries in the Middle East and the progress they have made toward making the lives of people with disabilities, physical disabilities, easier in a way. I traveled to the Gulf country, Qatar, to Doha, and then I traveled to Amman several times, and I traveled to Algeria. These were the three countries I traveled to, and each had different standards. I would say that in terms of laws, in terms of social acceptance, I would say that Qatar and Jordan are the highest. They're more advanced than, let's say, in Algeria. My trip to Algeria was very discouraging because there was not a single vehicle in the capital, in Algeria, that was wheelchair accessible.
Oh, wow.
Was not. And during that trip, we were guests at the foreign ministry. I was then a member of the Arab Thought Forum, and the annual meeting was held in Algiers, and they felt very embarrassed about the fact that they did not have any vehicle that was equipped with a lift or a ramp for me to use. So they had to rely on a kind of a truck that delivers vegetables and fruits to the shops. You know, they have a lift on the back of them, and they cleaned one and made one available to me, so I can travel between the different venues where we met during the conference. Now, the society's views about the disabled are very different depending on the laws, depending on, as I said, attitudes, depending on the background of society and the individual, and how basically people that are different from the traditional meaning, you know, bodily able people, how they're being viewed by the majority. I mean, as a person sitting in a wheelchair, I don't know whether you see me as a person who is just basically different, and then we begin, you and I, to begin to understand and deconstruct that difference in a meaningful way, or do you see me as somebody with a disease or a sickness, and do you feel kind of, sorry for me, or, gosh, I mean, different emotions can go through in each one of us as we look at someone who has a disability. I mean, our reaction individually and as a group, as a society, makes a difference. Makes a big difference in the end. Because I think as a society, it's the collective way of how we see others individually. Do we see them with pity, or do we see them with understanding? And, like, is a different world that we need to understand rather than pity? Or should we stick to our emotions, our initial emotions, and kind of go with that? Are there any laws that protect the rights of the disabled? That's another big question. What are the laws that exist in a society that protect the rights of the disabled? When you ask me the question, why do I think America is a great country? I say so because there are laws that protect me as a person with disability. That guarantees me opportunity. So, I mean, each one of us is looking for a future. Each one of us is looking for a way to participate in society. And if you don't have the rules and the laws that can allow for this to happen, then we're going to have problems in this society.
And you don't think Arab countries like, let's say, Jordan and Palestine, they don't have enough laws to protect people with disability?
Well, the laws are there, I think, but for the most part, but they're not enforced. So if you have a law and it's not being enforced, then the law becomes meaningless.
Okay.
So really having the laws and enforcing the laws and are two separate things.
So when you went to Nablus 35 years after the first time, you mentioned that you saw some improvement. To what degree was the improvement that you saw?
I was able to see others in wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, just
Okay.
in downtown Nablus. People just going about their own day and doing their own things. Unfortunately, there was not an accessible vehicle with a lift or ramp. But after I came back, I was told that there was one vehicle became available with a lift with a ramp on it. So they were able to purchase a vehicle from within Israel proper and put it into service, serving the people in Nablus. So there, we create awareness. I create awareness, uh, uh, but I think that overall people's attitudes were positive. Again, I went there as a professor and I left there as a student. So I mean, I don't know how people look at me after I was able to achieve and I was able to come back even on a short visit. Again, people were looking at me, well, wow, he's a person that because he was given another chance elsewhere, he was able to achieve. So they looked at me in a very, very positive way, very encouraging way. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I felt that uh, there are unions in Nablus now that deal with and Palestinian cities that cater for there are unions that the people with disabilities get together and form organizations like the one I referred to in my book in Syracuse, New York, like I referred to Arise, Michael
Ah,
Palin,
yes.
Michael Brand,
Yeah.
yes, that cater to the needs of people with disabilities. Yeah, there are those also in the Palestinian community that helped reshape the Palestinian society. So there's awareness that was not there 35 years ago, and that awareness moved the plight of the disabled forward, and that's encouraging, very encouraging. And that awareness, by the way, is uh, I was able to see it also in Jordan and in Qatar and Doha. Uh, but again, in various degrees. Not all of them are exactly the same. There are, each country has its own economic resources limitations. So the Gulf countries have enough resources to purchase and provide more to their citizens. In Jordan, we have more challenges economically. So there are lots of challenges. Economics and economy makes a big difference in the country. If you have a strong economy, I believe that social issues, social challenges, especially disability, become easier to deal with.
So I want to talk a bit about the spinal muscular atrophy, and you mentioned that your sister also has it. So I'm curious, how common is spinal muscular atrophy in Palestine or in the neighboring countries, and what are they doing to help people who get diagnosed with it?
It is not common at all in the middle. It's not common in the United States. That's the thing. It's not. It's a rare disease,
Okay.
but it's a genetic disease. So both of my mom and my dad had to be carriers of a certain gene for me to be able to be infected with that disease. So it is inherited, genetic, and but it's very rare. And uh, when my mom basically discovered that I had something going wrong, I was 2 years old. I was not able to walk. I was late in walking. Had difficulty sitting. So she was able to notice some differences.
Mm.
Uh, with my sister, it is scientists believe that the disease progresses much slower in females than males. So it was not as visible with my sister as it was with me. There is a 5-year difference in age between me and my sister. So, by the age of 3, obviously there was something wrong, visibly, noticeably wrong. So they took me to the AUB in Beirut. They took me to Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. They basically told them they knew about muscular dystrophy, but They didn't know about the details of muscular dystrophy at that time. There are 40 neuromuscular and neuromuscular diseases that fall under the umbrella of muscular dystrophy. So I was diagnosed exactly by Dr. Carl Crosley at the Syracuse University Hospital in 1983 as having spinal muscular atrophy.
And how is your sister doing, if you don't mind me asking?
Again, she's doing fine. She lives in Brussels in Belgium. And but again, she is able to walk very slowly, but
Okay.
she's not really dependent on a wheelchair, although she thinks that she's going to need one in the future.
So this all has been fascinating, and so what does the future hold for you, Dr. Hani, in terms of publishing or in terms of advocacy when it comes to the rights of the disabled, or even mathematics and reforming mathematics education? So what are your future plans after publishing this book?
I'm thinking about writing another book that looks at the perceptions, dig deeper into the perceptions of the disabled, of themselves and others of the disabled. I would like to know more about that and research that even more. So I'm thinking about doing research in that area to see how the disabled see themselves and how others see the disabled. In terms of education, I'm going to continue to teach and make a difference in the lives of those who want to learn mathematics. And I want to share with them my story. And I do that, by the way, in the classroom a lot. And it makes a big difference in the communication I have with my students. I think we have I have a very unique relationship with my students. And that relationship is based on mutual understanding and mutual respect. And when I teach, they look at me with a lot of curiosity because they want to know more about me. And now I have a book that they can read and more about me. But I just feel that in them that they really would like to know and learn from me, because, as I said, some of them excel in mathematics, but others struggle with mathematics. And those who struggle would like to, know more about ways to do better, do well. And as I tell my students, we all face challenges in life. The question is, how do you look at the challenge and how do you deal with it? That's ultimately what determines our success, our final success or final failure in this world. How do we look at the challenges that we confront on a daily basis? How do we deal with them? How do we deal with difficulties? How do we deal with failure? How do we deal with trials? I'm thinking also about expanding this book, the one that I just published, into a second edition, and based on the feedback I get from others, and based on other elements that I felt that I needed to address more in depth. So I'm thinking about also creating a second edition of the book, a couple of years, maybe a year or 2 years from now. And so these are the kind of the plans for the future.
Did you get any feedback from the students? Anyone read the book?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And they were all very encouraging remarks. And again, I mean, I'm not. The book has different. I mean, I talk about education.
Yeah.
I talk about family formation. I talk about lots of different aspects that I went through myself that allow the reader to kind of look at life in a very interesting way, as interesting as mine was. And I think that each one of us need to write their own biography. I think we're all very unique in our own ways, very unique. And I think sharing our own stories with the world will make the world a much better place to live in.
Um, amen to that. So, I think one of my probably the last question, we're coming close to the hour, is you adopted 4 kids, and how was it? Did you face any resistance from adoption agencies because you're a disabled person, or was the adoption process smooth? And how was that for you?
Adoption, the process was very smooth. There had to be, certain conditions that adoptive parents have to meet, uh, and we met all of them. So the fact that I was in a wheelchair did not really stand in the way. Plus, my wife had 2 kids from her previous marriage, so we already dealt with raising children before. So
Okay.
we kind of, but no, there was no objection at all.
Hmm.
Again, I was and I am employed, and that makes a big difference. So in other words, you know, uh, being in a wheelchair did not really stand in the way at all, because I was able to participate with, as a citizen in the community, uh, and I had my rights and I had my responsibilities.
So, any final thoughts, especially for anyone who, like, for one who is disabled, or live or have disabled family members, one who comes from harsh circumstances, like you growing up under occupation, and just final thoughts on resilience, on hope. Just love to hear from you.
Well, I think that no one should continue living without hope. I mean, once we give up on hope, we give up on life. I think it is the fuel of life, hope. And again, hope does not guarantee anything. Hope gives you the energy for today, to go through today. But tomorrow, you need another renewed hope to meet the demands of tomorrow. So I think that living life without hope is certainly going to be very, very difficult. Resilience, uh, I got resilience from uh, thinking difficult and thinking hard about uh, what if I don't meet life with resiliency. I mean, what if I give up? Where will I be if I give up? And I think that we know the answer. Many of us know, if not all of us know the answer as to where we're going to be if we give up. We can predict that. And I am a true believer that if you want to create your own future, the best way to predict your future, is to make it yourself. And again, I did not uh, uh, I did not achieve in this world, in my life, without the help of so many others. And I give all of them that I felt that the credit they deserve for being there for me, starting with my own teachers in Nablus, starting with going through my teachers in every college I attended, and the fact that we all share common humanity should be the focus of our existence. There's a lot that can divide people. There's a lot that can bring people apart, but there's a lot that can bring people together. And I think we need to focus on the fact that we are all common, and we share common humanity in this world. And that should be our goal, how we can make that humanity prosper. How can we nourish and allow this humanity to flourish? So I say hope is key, perseverance is key. Uh, if you fall down, get up and try again. It's not the end of the world. Uh, just face the world with a smile on your face. I think that's the best we can do.
That's great. I feel very inspired. So thank you very much, Dr. Hani, for your time. I had a great time, and I'm sure the listeners and the viewers are really inspired by your story. Again, for everyone who's listening or watching, Dr. Hani Khoury's book is Giving Up is Not an Option. It's available on Amazon and other places as well. And thank you everyone for watching another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. Until we meet again.